He then made 2 stops before coming back to town. He went to an Air Force base right outside of Shreveport, Louisiana, where he made a statement saying that we were the victims of a faceless coward. He then flew to an Air Force base outside of Omaha, Nebraska, where he met with the National Security Council, a private lockdown meeting, one of the most secure Air Force bases in this country. And now we are told he is in Air Force One, headed back here to Washington, D.C. Aides right now are also preparing a list of options available to the president. One of those options, we're told, includes the closing of our nation's border. So we'll have to wait for word from the Pentagon and the president as he comes back to Washington, D.C. Meanwhile, here's a symbol that marks the sentiment right now. Flags are at half-staff surrounding the Washington Monument. What you don't see there are the sharpshooters that gathered this morning to protect that national icon. Nearby, a search and rescue mission is underway right now at the Pentagon. A jet airliner slammed into the area between corridors 3 and 5 of the Pentagon around 9:45 this morning. We're going to get to a little bit of amateur video shot by someone who arrived on the scene shortly after the crash. Law enforcement says the plane was an American Airlines jetliner that had taken off from Dulles International. It was on a flight to Los Angeles Airport. Dozens of people are being treated at local hospitals right now. And then up in New York, a sense of pandemonium. People were running through the streets of Manhattan trying to escape the violence. That is a ground-level view as people race away from the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. Terrorists targeted the Twin Towers at about 8:45 this morning. Within 15 minutes of each other, a plane flew into each tower. Both collapsed within 2 hours after that. Thousands have been injured, and thousands may have died, not the least of which are the firefighters and police personnel that responded and had 2 hours to get inside the building, get up into the stairwells, negotiate the slippery stairs that they had going up 110 floors, trying to get as many people as they possibly could get out of that building, not knowing, of course, that both of those buildings would eventually come crumbling to the ground. Right now, there is a search and rescue effort underway there. A high-ranking federal law enforcement officer, as we've been reporting just recently, says that Osama bin Laden is atop the list of suspects responsible for today's attack. In response to the attacks, the military is on its highest level of alert. The Navy has sent both aircraft carriers and guided missile destroyers both here to Washington and up to New York. National Guard troops are activated, and for the first time in American history, the FAA has grounded all flights until at least noon tomorrow. I want to give you a sense of the magnitude of this attack, Mike and Tracy. You heard from Senator McCain a bit earlier. The deadliest attack against the United States here in the United States on our soil was Pearl Harbor. 2,400 people died in that attack. This attack easily has the capability of matching that, if not surmounting that death toll. That's the latest from here in the newsroom. Mike, Tracy, back to you.
Quite possible it will surpass it. Thank you so much, Brian.
Sure.
We've been taking a camera to show you the streets of Washington, D.C., sort of a high shot, and what you see are empty streets. The city essentially has shut down for all practical purposes, although the key government agencies are continuing to operate. We understand the Congress is operating. Of course, the President, the Vice President, the Speaker of the House, all operating. The First Lady is fine. Everyone is taken care of. But you don't see much happening, and in the middle of all of that quiet at this moment is Paul Wagner. What's the latest, Paul?
Well, Mike, I've been downtown here for many, many hours, since about 10 o'clock this morning. This is about the calmest that it's been since then. I can tell you, after walking around the blocks in this downtown area here, we're in Connecticut and K, right by Farragut Square, that all the businesses up and down here, up and down K Street, up and down Connecticut Avenue, all shut down. Many of them have signs on the doors saying, due to the terrorist attack and bomb scares, they have closed for the day. I can tell you that the hotels down here have taken extraordinary precautions as far as security. The Mayflower Hotel just up the street here, you cannot get into the hotel unless you have some sort of identification or you can show a key to show that you are a guest of the hotel. Also, just down the street on K Street, the Capitol Hilton and the Hay Adams Hotel, the same. Now, just behind me here, you can see a D.C. police officer on horseback. This is a recent addition here to the downtown area. This officer just standing in the intersection, directing traffic when he can, whenever he's needed. Now, just past him up the street on 17th Street, you can see that there is a lot of yellow tape set up. There have been cars across 17th Street blocking that access to get down towards the executive office buildings and the White House. those cars have moved, but that tape is still up. You cannot get down that way. K Street had been very, very slow here for many, many hours, but that now is starting to move. People starting to get out of the area. And up Connecticut Avenue here, as I look towards DuPont Circle, pretty much empty, Mike and Tracy. Very few people down here at this point. Now, in addition to that, I do think we have some video of what we shot earlier today down around 1 Judiciary Square. I'm not sure if we're seeing this at this point, but the hours that I did spend down there, the FBI agents with machine guns and shotguns surrounding the FBI's Washington field office, also down around the D.C. Police headquarters. A number of recruits have been called in and were lined that building, trying to protect that area. And that had been very, very, very protected for many hours. And in fact, down in this area now, it's like a maze trying to come through here. There is yellow police tape and police cars set up all around here. You just don't know exactly where you're going to be able to go. But most of the Federal Triangle down here around the White House, down around the Capitol, and down around police headquarters and the FBI, you're not going to be able to get onto those side streets. That has all been closed down. Here at the Metro, we've been seeing people come and go. But again, we're seeing a lot of a movement now, much more so on K Street, and a lot of people had been coming up and down Connecticut Avenue and down K Street, but a lot of those folks seem to be making their way out of the city. Mike and Tracy.
All right, thank you very much, sir. We appreciate the information you're passing on to us there.
I want to bring you up to date. We are getting some information to the newsroom now about one of the passengers on board that plane that crashed into the Pentagon this morning. We are told that among the dead on that plane, Barbara Olson, Republican activist, was also the wife of General Ted Olson, who argues Bush's cases before the Supreme Court. Barbara Olson, someone who has gone on media as a spokesperson before for various agencies, but a Republican activist, Barbara Olson, among those on the plane that crashed into the Pentagon, we are told this morning.
We're now getting information, more and more confirmation as they actually get eyewitness accounts and that sort of thing, that apparently it was, in fact, an American Airlines jet that went into the side of the Pentagon. That sort of makes the earlier information that we were passing on not jibe correctly, and that is that we don't know. We know that at least one American Airlines plane went into one of the towers in New York, one of the World Trade Center towers. We thought that both American Airlines planes had gone in there. Now it appears that one has gone there, so that would mean there would be two United airliners, one that may have been the second one that actually hit in New York. We're speculating at this point. None of this has been confirmed by the agencies investigating.
Jay Fassett, chairman of the Arlington County Board, is on the phone with us. Can you, well, I guess you're live. Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you, yes.
Thank you for joining us this afternoon. What can you tell us about what's happening there in Virginia?
Well, sadly, Arlington is right at the heart of this tragedy, Arlington and New York City. This morning, Arlington put together an emergency operations center early this morning. We had years of training, our emergency medical, firefighter, police personnel, and emergency preparedness, and today some of that was put to good use. At about 12 o'clock, the manager declared an emergency, and at 3 o'clock, the board held a special session to ratify that declaration of emergency.
And the purpose of that is to make resources available to help out?
That is correct. There are two reasons. One is to allow the manager the flexibility to respond to a situation as it arises with the maximum amount of flexibility, and secondly, to be able to tap through the state federal resources. We already have reached out to other jurisdictions like Virginia Beach, Montgomery, and Fairfax to provide some assistance.
There were a lot of road closures around the Pentagon, including Route 1, 110. Are those roads still closed down to inbound and outbound traffic? Do you know?
I cannot tell you that I know exactly the status of each of those road closures, but I know a number of them are going to be closed for quite some time. The best thing to suggest is that people check the radio and TV to find out the exact status of particular roadways.
Okay. Is there anything else that you'd like to pass along to us, Jay, about what is happening there in Arlington right now?
Well, the one thing I would say is I'm here at the Virginia Hospital Center, formerly Arlington Hospital, and I have been very impressed with the hospital's work, the number of physicians and others that have shut down their offices and come to help, as well as our own emergency medical staff, firefighters, and police have done a terrific job. Arlington's firefighters are the primary responders to Pentagon's situations like this.
I agree with you. It is rather impressive to see not only the people who are trained to do this, but the number of volunteers, whether they're nurses, doctors, or people who just happen to be in their car nearby who are just volunteering to help. It's nice to see us all sort of pull together in a time of crisis like this, isn't it?
You're absolutely right. I mean, it's a tragedy. We can't even understand what's happened yet, many of us. But the number of people that pull together, that offer their services, volunteer food and other things, we've had lots of those phone calls. The most important thing I would suggest to people, however, is unless you really need to, stay off the phones, stay off the streets, because there's still some need to keep those phone lines and roadways open.
All right, very good advice, and I imagine, Jay Fassett, that we will be talking to you somewhere down the road, so I thank you for your time now, the chair of the Arlington County Board.
Ariel Sharon is now speaking to reporters, talking about terrorism and expressing sorrow to the United States for what has taken place today, saying that terrorism has no place and that it must be done away with. And certainly we heard from Yasser Arafat earlier today, saying that he expressed sorrow for Americans. We had the Taliban in Afghanistan saying that Osama bin Laden wasn't involved, and they were certainly sorry that this had taken place. And then, of course, we have information from the authorities that are investigating this unbelievable event that took place today, saying that at the top of the list of the suspects is Osama bin Laden. Today, we're looking at a lot of different aspects of this story as it begins to unfold like an onion, piece by piece, layer by layer. We're getting stories of incredible bravery, people who have gone in to try and help others even when they were hurt. The gentleman that we met, who was a firefighter, part of the group that's stationed there at the Pentagon, hurt himself, but in there trying to help other people to get out. The crews that are standing by, ready to go into the Pentagon to begin the recovery that takes place there. Some fire still going on. The protection, we're seeing the police with armament there, trying to be sure that if there's anything else going on, that we will be ready for it and we can protect our own.
And hats off to those of you who contacted the Red Cross or any other hospital facility around here offering blood, offering any assistance. We know that some people offered rides for people who were stranded, who were seen walking across the bridge there where Arlington National Cemetery is, sort of stranded, no way to get home, not even really fully aware of what happened to them just moments ago. So, you know, it's really nice to see, as I was saying to Jay Fassett, so many people pitch in and do the right thing at a time of need.
At this moment, we're all in shock. At this moment, we're all saddened by what's taken place. We're in awe of the incredible sight of that tower coming down. I would say that by this time tomorrow, we're all going to be pretty angry about what's taken place. There will be such a call and a cry, a hue and cry to come after terrorism. And we want to talk to an expert on that subject to find out what happens next in a situation like this. Ben Vensky joins us now by phone. Ben, tell us, what will America do? What can America do?
Well, it's a difficult situation, and unfortunately, it's the kind of thing that there is simply no way to prevent every single type of terrorist attack from occurring. What you can do is you can try to stack the odds as greatly in your favor as possible, and on unfortunate days like today when the terrorists actually succeed at launching their attack, you can have as robust and as capable an emergency response plan in place so that you can mitigate, you can save as many lives as possible and mitigate the damage that is caused. And in this period from now forward, as we've done in the past, we need to closely look at exactly how this occurred, how it took place, and what other things that we can do. But even when we do them, unfortunately, we live in a time in the world today where this is something that we're going to have to come to grips with and be able to deal with, because we will never be able to stop them all completely.
Make an interesting point here, and I, at the risk of sounding jaded, we've known that something like this was going to come our way sooner or later, that it was just a matter of time. It wasn't if, it was when. Yes,
we have, and that's part of the problem. For the last 2-3 years, going to just before and after the East Africa embassy bombings, we have been in a constant state of continual alerts, warnings, on a monthly basis, week to week, around the world at our different facilities, and it was clear to everyone, from the intelligence community, law enforcement, and even many Americans, that something was going to happen. No, certainly we didn't know exactly what, we didn't know how, but we knew that these groups were out there. They were trying to do something like this, and that ultimately something would occur. The problem is that when you are at such a heightened level of security, you can only raise the threat level so high, and you can only to maintain that level of vigilance and awareness for so long. After you do it year after year after year, it's human nature to begin to take it less seriously. And the problem is that the terrorist organizations get to choose the time and place. And they know that complacency comes in, and that's when they're going to act.
Well, I'm glad you talked about that a little bit, Ben, because that was going to be my question to you. You know, knowing that this could happen, knowing that the threats were out there, how could it happen, you know, at this magnitude? You know, what was the weak point in the link that allowed this to happen in New York and in Washington today? And it could have been much worse.
Right, it could have. And for all we know right now, there may have been other components of this attack that did not succeed. All that we can see clearly in the public view is those that did. The problem here, and kind of reiterating a portion of what I was saying before, is that we have lots of technological solutions. We have scanners, X-ray machines, bomb detection devices at airports that are very effective. But whether you're dealing with computer security or physical security anywhere in the world, the weakest link is always the human link, because you're doing a repetitive task every day, day after day, when 99.9% of the time nothing happens. And that's part of the problem with a lot of our dependency on airline security and some other things where we're reliant on people. We're expecting them to be vigilant as they are the first day on the job, the first hour, for 3, 4, 5 years and more. And it's simply not really human. It's a very high expectation that we have, and terrorists know this, and they know how to manipulate that system to take advantage of somebody, to slip stuff through, to find those weak points. Whenever there's an attack like this, these are not things that are done impulsively. They're things that are planned and organized over a period of a year or more, where they'll do extensive surveillance, they'll take pictures, they'll have videotape of the targets, and they'll analyze all this, and they'll find those weak points, and then they'll work to exploit them.
This was not whipped up in a couple of weeks then. This has been months, perhaps even years.
Oh, easily. And for something like this, I would expect that we'd be looking at something that's been in the planning stages for a year or more, and using infrastructure, terrorist cells, and other components of their organization that have been in place for even longer than that. And this is another problem that we have here in the United States. We tend to have a very short attention span. And what we need to keep in mind as a country is that when a terrorist organization or others issues a threat, they may issue that threat a year to 2 years ago, and they will begin immediately working towards achieving that goal. But we may not see the end result of that for much further down the path, much later. And the problem is how to keep our attention and our awareness focused to that. And I think what we need to move towards, and I think what unfortunately we're being forced into moving towards, is integrating it into a constant state of our thinking, from everything to how we design a building, how we go through our daily routine, to the point that we're just, without thinking, doing things that will make it more difficult for the terrorist groups.
Ben Bensky, thank you very much for being with us. They have our attention, and they're not going to be happy about it, I'll tell you that.
And the person that the U.S. government now believes is behind this, I'll hold up this, it's a poster of the FBI's 10 Most Wanted. If you can see there, it's Osama bin Laden, of course, among the FBI's 10 Most Wanted, now believed to be the mastermind behind the terrorist attacks that happened today. I want to let you know that Mayor Anthony Williams now says that all bridges into and out of the district are open, as are all streets, except for those very close to the White House.
Elizabeth Leamy has been following the story for us from the Armory, has managed to get find her way back here to the station. Elizabeth, fill us in on what you've been able to learn out there.
Okay, well, first of all, I want to address something that is affecting everyone, which is transportation. How did I get to the Armory? I actually took the Metro down there to do my assignment, and the good news is the Metro is running beautifully. The bad news is the public doesn't seem to really realize it. I've seen the Metro more crowded after a hockey game. It really wasn't very crowded, and that's a shame because the Metro really is getting people where they need to go pretty efficiently. We did shoot a little bit of video down there, and I'm hoping that it's available. Yes, let's see. You know, normally Metro Transit Police are pretty low-key, but today some of them are carrying machine guns. You'll probably see that officer come into view here momentarily. Really an unusual sight in a free society. The other thing that I think is very fortunate, not too many months ago, Metro installed electronic information signs. There's one there, and those are proving to be incredibly helpful today. They're a bit alarming with the red security alert, but they are constantly scrolling fresh information about which stations are closed, which bus services are being offered, if stations are closed, etc. And it's very, very helpful, particularly because passengers do seem to be so confused. Another thing that I noticed, just to share my experience with you, here I am down in the Metro, and people don't normally speak to each other. People were talking to each other, and this is the kind of thing that certainly brings people together. And it was, you know, people reflecting on this terrible thing that has happened, also experienced Metro riders helping out those who really don't know the Metro system. And there were some unusual things happening that people did need help with. For example, for quite some time, and I believe it's still the case, the Metro was not running across the river on the yellow line. But you could get where you needed to go if you went all the way around in sort of a circuitous route on the blue line. And on my train, there was one woman who was kind of shepherding a whole bunch of other passengers along and explaining how to do that. So it was really kind of neat. On my way back from the Armory, we drove, and I'm happy to say you just mentioned most of the streets in the city now seem to be clear. The bridges are all open. Indeed, we did not have a difficult time making it from the Stadium Armory area back here to upper northwest D.C. where our station is. So apparently a lot of people have made it home at this point. And if you are still one of those who has stuck it out and stayed at work for some reason, I can personally recommend the Metro, and I know authorities are also urging people to go ahead and give the Metro a try. Mike, Tracy? Yeah, that's probably a very good idea if you do have to leave the house at all today. I want to tell you, too, that Mayor Williams says that they are trying to determine right now whether D.C. schools will be open tomorrow. So if you're waiting for information, no determination has been made yet, but as soon as officials make that decision, we will pass it along to you.
Pat McGrath is one of our many staff members who's been following the story today and bringing us a variety of different aspects to it. Pat, what's the latest from where you are?
Mike, I am at the Capitol Police headquarters on Capitol Hill, where Richard Shelby, the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, just finished talking to reporters. He said, quite frankly, our intelligence failed. We were caught completely flat-footed. That's pretty candid stuff from the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. The latest news is, you know, all day long we have not heard anything from the House and Senate leadership. That's because they were moved early this morning to a secret, secure location. Authorities really were concerned about the chain of command in the same way they didn't fly President Bush back to the White House immediately. There was great concern about keeping the chain of command open. Well, we are now told that at 7:30 tonight, the House and Senate leadership will be back here at the Capitol, and they are going to have a news conference at 7:30 on the east front of the Capitol. So we will finally hear from the House and Senate leadership. For the most part, the senators and congressmen have been reasonably cautious in their reactions today. I mean, most of the comments have been in sympathy, condemning the action and sympathy for the parents, etc. But one person was much stronger than Richard Shelby, Congressman Dana Rohrabacher of California. Now, he's an outspoken guy in the past, but he was particularly outspoken today. He called our intelligence a failure absolutely of catastrophic proportions, and he argued that we ought to actually have a clean sweep of our intelligence agencies. Now, others, another member of his same committee came forward and said, well, I think it's too early. We need more facts on that. But he said, you know, that may be the conclusion once the facts are in. So most people aren't rushing to judgment up here, except for Rohrabacher, and I understand Congressman Kurt Weldon also shares similar sentiments. But I think you are going to hear very strong comments up here on Capitol Hill. Maybe not so much today, because out of concern for the deaths and that sort of thing. But boy, in the days ahead, they're going to be looking real hard at what is clearly an intelligence failure. Rohrabacher said, "My God, 4 planes." He said he is something of an expert on Afghanistan. He said it would have taken a year and a half of planning to do this, and not to have learned anything about this in something that has been planned. Clearly, that's is a tremendous failure of intelligence, and so there's going to be a lot of post-mortem on this. And right now, at this very moment, members of House and Senate are being briefed across the street at the Capitol Police headquarters, and we are told that they, after the briefing, they will come out and talk to us. Although what we're hearing now is they're being briefed mostly about the extent of the damage and the loss of life and things like that. That they're probably not getting too much about, intelligence failures and who did it and that sort of thing. But we won't know for sure until we come out. And perhaps the House and Senate leadership at their 7:30 news conference will be able to shed more light on details, because they have been in touch with the President and the White House all day.
Pat McGrath, thanks very much. We have heard just a moment ago that we have a situation in which we may have gotten a warning as far as a year ago, but we wouldn't have had any way of knowing when they would do it. Here it is.
I want to tell you that we are getting word from New York right now that another building has collapsed. I understand that this is a 47-story building. Do we have pictures of it? I guess that's smoke now. Correct me if I'm wrong in the control room, please. But is that smoke coming from this third collapse? Okay, that is what we're understanding, which makes sense because it looks like the sun is going down. But the heavy black smoke once again.
Look at that.
Hopefully at this point that building was empty, but I have no way of knowing that. But I'm hoping that enough people have cleared out of downtown Manhattan so that perhaps it wasn't as full as it might be normally around 5:30 on a Tuesday.
That information, of course, take a look at that right-hand side of the screen.
It's going down right now.
There it is.
Yep.
It went down right there. This is not from an explosion or an aircraft at this point, from our knowledge. The information that we have is that this is a building that probably was incredibly structurally damaged by the goings-on right next door at the World Trade Center and the 2 crashes that took place there.
Yeah, it is another building at the World Trade Center itself, number 7 World Trade Center. Let's see. It had been evacuated this morning after the plane attack, so that's exactly what I was hoping. So structural damage, as you had suggested, probably led to this building going down.
We are seeing video today that only Hollywood could have produced at another time. We have seen the Twin Towers come apart right in front of our eyes. We've seen aircraft smashing into the side of them. Just now we saw another building as a part of that complex go down. It is so unbelievable, it is so surreal, that it's very hard for most Americans, most anyone in the world, to be able to grasp what is really taking place here. The folks who are running things, however, do have a grasp of it. As we heard from Pat McGrath, the first thing they did was they scooped up all of the leaders of the intelligence community, certainly the senators and congresspeople who were involved with any of this, who had spots that they needed to be able to protect immediately. The vice president, the president, of course, was on the road, but they immediately went into a full security mode for him. For the First Lady, for the Speaker of the House. As we understand it, Colin Powell is on his way back to the United States now, although we don't know where he'll land, coming back from Peru, where he had been out of the country on the nation's business.
I want to pass along a message from Mayor Anthony Williams. He is asking that travel in the district be limited to only essential trips, and he is urging caution, which is interesting. He says there are no specific threats, but he is urging caution here in the district. So probably very good advice at this point.
It sure is. This video is so compelling, we want to share it with you again. It just happened moments ago. We understand this is Building 7. This is on the right-hand side of your screen, and you'll see it start to disappear right in front of your eyes. Part of the Twin Towers complex, apparently so structurally damaged that it came down as well just moments ago, and we understand that it was evacuated earlier. So That's
at least
good. At least that.
Yes. Let's go to Fox 5's Audrey Barnes, still at the Pentagon. You've been covering this all day long. Bring us up to date on what's happening there now.
Tracy, just within the last few minutes, there have been some very weary volunteers who have helped with the rescue mission out here, and they're making their way back across the bridge. And one of those people who has been in the thick of things all day is John Geisen. He's a Navy commander who was in the Pentagon. You were in the public affairs office watching what was happening at the World Trade Center, and then all of a sudden...
Well, we left that, walked over toward the cafeteria, and that's when it all broke loose. On our way over to the cafeteria, people just came racing out from the other side of the building, trying to get out of the way of the explosion. Smoke and debris was coming down the way, and people were really scared and not sure what happened.
Now, you said you actually saw the nose gear of the plane inside the Pentagon?
They organized rescue teams, and we all went in to see what we could do to help. And I was working in an area where, between the two rings, where a large 10-foot diameter hole would burst through, and there was the nose gear on the deck.
Describe this devastation inside the Pentagon.
Lots of burned out passageways, firefighters working very hard to control the fire, and smoke everywhere, standing water about 6 inches deep in different areas, blowing out windows, you name it. It took a very strong hit.
Now, you actually helped some people get out of the Pentagon after this happened?
They had set up a triage rally point, and we all started there, and then they kept having to move the triage center further and further away from the building. And so as most of the people made their own way out or were assisted, then we would take them even further and get them a safe distance from the building.
What kind of injuries did you see? People had to be in shock.
Smoke inhalation was the worst. Lacerations, heat exhaustion for some of the people that would spend a lot of time in there trying to get out. Some broken people had suffered a break in an arm or something like that.
You're a Navy commander. You're trained to be prepared for the absolute worst. Do you think you've seen the worst today?
Yes. Yes, I do. I've done 2 deployments to the Persian Gulf. I've seen tankers shot up during the Gulf tanker war. But this is unbelievable.
When they tell you the Pentagon is safe for you to go back in, you're going to have any trouble walking back in that building and doing your job?
No, I'll go back when they tell me it's ready to go.
Thank you very much, John Geisen, one of the volunteers out here. Now, we are told that there was a big, major effort to retrieve the American flag that flies above the Pentagon. That huge flag was retrieved safely, and there was a huge roar from the crowd of volunteers, hundreds and hundreds of volunteers who've been helping out, just like John Geisen, all day long to help the injured out of that building. We're told that the FBI has taken over this investigation. They're treating it as a crime scene. At this point, they do not expect to remove any bodies from inside the Pentagon until the FBI has completed its investigation, and right now that could take quite some time. Reporting live from the Pentagon, Audrey Barnes, Fox 5 News.
All right, sometimes it's the small victories in times like this that can keep everyone going, but unfortunately we have some troubling news to share with you from the Pentagon.
We are told, you're looking at video, by the way, of Connecticut and Kay, as you see the military vehicles going through the streets of Washington. If this doesn't look like a movie scene, I don't know what does. I mean, the Denzel Washington film I was thinking of as I'm looking at this. This is not the movies, folks. This is real life in America in 2001. Let's talk about what's going on now with the folks at Dulles Airport. Sean Yancey is there. And Sean, we're going to talk to you in just a second very quickly. I want to share one piece of information about Fox Television saying that at the Pentagon, which you're looking at right now, that's the point of the breach where the aircraft, we're told the 757 American Airlines jet, went through the side of the building, through those different rings. We are told there are 100 dead at this point.
All right, Sean Yancey is on the phone with us now, and I understand that, Sean, you're at the Marriott outside of Dulles Airport where family members and friends have gathered for what will be a very, very long night, very long weeks to come, as they are being told given confirmation that their loved ones were in fact on board the American Airlines plane that crashed into the Pentagon or elsewhere.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I just spoke with one of the hotel officials, and he has told me there are 10 or less victims' family members that started arriving around 10:30 or 11 o'clock this morning, and he said their reactions were what yours or mine would be. Obviously, they're hurt, they're devastated. They're not exactly sure what to expect or what to think, but the hotel is prepared. They're offering food, they're offering rooms, anything that the victims' families need. Just a short time ago, American Airlines confirmed that all of its remaining airplanes in its airline system, including TWA and American Eagle, have all been accounted for and are safe. Again, as you said, 2 American jets crashed earlier today of apparent terrorist attacks, the one originating here at Dulles was Flight 77, 58 passengers, 6 crew members on board that Boeing 757 that was en route to Los Angeles. We are being kept away from hotel guests. We're actually being kept in a room in the basement for the press only, so we are having a hard time being able to talk to some of these people. As you can imagine, they're devastated. They're not exactly sure what's going to happen next or what to expect next. American Airlines officials are here. Airport Authority officials are here. We're expecting them to come down and give us a briefing in about 30 minutes. When we get more information, we'll pass that along to you. Reporting live from the Dulles Marriott at the airport, I'm Sean Yancey. Back to you.
All right. Thanks so much, Sean.
We realize that the individuals involved in this will need counseling, those who have lost loved ones, those who have actually gone through the rubble to try and save lives or to retrieve victims, whatever, in New York, certainly, here at the Pentagon as well. And then there's the national psyche. How are Americans going to how are they going to react to all of this and what's taken place here? Let's talk to Lisa Van Susteren now, who is a clinical, or forensic psychologist, I should say. Lisa, thank you for being with us. What is it going to be like for America over these next days?
Well, Mike, obviously we're all very shaken by this, and our anxieties are very high. Some of us are even terrified. I think that there is no doubt that there's no running away from this. Talking about how children are going to react, they're anxious, they can see that we are, and I don't think that it will help them to try to avoid much of what's going on. Obviously, really little kids, we will try to keep them and protect them, but I think there are a couple of critical things that we can do as a family. Would you like me to talk about those?
Yes, please.
Well, first of all, I think that families should sit down together and really try what they can do to process what's happened. Admittedly, we do it in many different ways, but one thing to talk to children about as far as their fears are concerned is that they need to trust in the fact that the police, the FBI, and all of the government agencies are doing all they possibly can to find out what happened and who did it. And the second thing that I think that we need to realize and need to talk to not only our children but even to each other is that this is a very small number of people who have done this. This is a group of people who are very sick, and they're bad people. It's not everybody, and people need to realize that. And thirdly, this is something that we have to be extremely careful about, and I've heard a couple of people say some things even today, well, I hate this group of people or that group of people. We have to be careful. This is not a whole nation or a whole religious group or a whole ethnic group. These are a few people. We must resist the impulse to blame a whole group of people. We have to recognize these are a few sick individuals.
Lisa, let me just jump in here very quickly and ask you something here. I'm wondering if America, to some extent, through the variety of things that go on, particularly lately. I mean, here we've had shark attacks where people have been ripped apart, and we see the bombers, the suicide bombers that have taken place. And in fact, one community saying, well, gee, maybe the suicide bombings, that's okay. They should go ahead and do that. I mean, the bombing scenes even that we saw today, I mean, the people who were walking around with the ash all over them and burned in the middle of New York, that could have been something that we had seen from a video that came from Jerusalem or someplace in Israel.
You see, this is why our sense of security, we have been very blessed in this country. These are not the streets of Belfast. This is not the Balkans. This is not something that we are accustomed to seeing. So, yes, our security has been deeply shaken by that fact, and maybe that should bring us to realize how lucky we have been in this country and how devoted we should be to retaining the sense of ethics that we really want our children and the rest of our community members to focus on, to be respectful and tolerant of each other. This is why we love America. We have been free here. We've been very tolerant. This is why, in a sense, we're targets.
Well, tell me this, Lisa. This is Tracy Neal in the newsroom. At this point, how do we all go on? I mean, adults as well as children. How do you get on that next airplane? How do you go downtown? How do you go back to work if you work across the street?
It's going to be very tough. Obviously, for some people, it's tougher than for others. Sometimes the more sensitive the individual, sometimes the harder it is. I think that one of the things that we can do is admit how anxious we are. Don't try to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. We are anxious, but we need to focus on what all of the agencies are doing and how safe America is and has been, and that this is something which, though it has shaken us to our very core, we are going to do everything that we possibly can to make sure this doesn't happen again.
It's very encouraging. It's going to be very hard, though, when those bodies start coming out, being pulled out of those buildings.
We need to grieve this. We need to feel anxious together. We need to have all of the emotions come out. It will not do us any good to pretend otherwise.
Lisa, let me just ask you one quick question before we let you go here, and that is, I used a term earlier, and perhaps I'm painting with too broad a brush here, but I wonder what your take on it might be. My take on this kind of an incident will be that Americans will, in fact, hunker down, galvanize, and go after their lives and their way of life to protect it.
Of course we will. We are a very blessed nation, and we have seen that in other instances where we've been shaken, Oklahoma, other incidents, we do pick up. We will go on, and we deeply admire and respect all the things that we stand for, and that will give us the courage to go on. But we do need to speak about these things. We do need to discuss how frightened we are, and then pick up as we always have in the past.
You said frightened. Tomorrow the emotion will probably be anger, don't you think?
Oh, there will be that too. I think it depends on the type of person that you're talking about. Some people respond to their grief and to their sadness with anger, and some people... So it's a different sort of way, and I don't think there's just one correct way. But we need, again, to focus that anger on a small group of people, not a whole nation or a whole religious group, and recognize that what's so wonderful about America has been our open-mindedness and our tolerance. We need to go after a specific set of people.
Point well taken. Lisa Ben Susteren, forensic psychologist.
Thank you, Lisa. I want to let you know that Amtrak service is operating, at least on an hourly basis. We understand that Union Station is open again, perhaps not all of the service, so you might want to contact them if you are trying to catch a train there. But at least some of the service is back up and running now.
A little disconcerting to see the streets of D.C. so empty, with the Humvees going through the middle of them. But Paul Wagner's there watching all of it for us and brings us the latest. Paul?
Mike, just a few minutes ago, as you did see live, there were a number of Humvees, D.C. National Guard coming down K Street. They did have a police escort on the side of those Humvees. It said military police. We're unclear where they're heading, possibly down to SOD headquarters, which is a few blocks down this way, and then they will get their orders from there. Now, here in the downtown area, I've been here for hours. I've been here since 10 o'clock this morning, and for hours we heard nothing but wailing siren after wailing siren, checking out all sorts of suspicious packages and heading to suspicious trucks and so forth and so on.
Paul, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt.
Down.
I have to interrupt you very quickly here, my friend. We have a breaking element on part of this story here. Tracy?
We understand that search dogs are now going into the rubble at the Pentagon. We understand that they might be part of the Fairfax County search and rescue team. The dogs, well, they're trained to sniff out cadavers or bodies, but hopefully at this point, in the first few hours, first day at least after this attack, perhaps they can pull out a survivor. We don't know.
Victims who may be trapped.
That's right. It's quite possible that somebody could be trapped inside there. But the dogs, as you can see right now, you can see the trainers going in with them, with their backpacks on, their gear, their hard hats hanging off their belts. It is a very grim task, but they are going in right now.
They're a finely trained group, and Bob Barnard is there in that area. Now, Bob, what can you see from where you are, my friend?
We're seeing the picture you're looking at, Mike. You might have difficulty hearing me in a minute because a Fairfax County police helicopter is about to take off, but that was actually a Montgomery County urban search and rescue team heading over to the building. But again, we were told earlier within the hour that they were not going to be sending any of these teams in until the firefighting efforts had been completed. And if we see a wider shot here in a second, you'll see that the roof is still smoldering. There are firefighters still on ladders atop the Pentagon. They are still putting out the fire, so they are getting their search and rescue teams, the dog that you just saw there from Montgomery County, Fairfax counties from Virginia, their urban search and rescue team, all working for FEMA right now. they are getting in place because as soon as they knock down this fire, they will then send in the teams.
So that's a good point, Bob. I know you can't hear me very clearly, but our viewers...
I can.
Okay, well, I was going to say our viewers certainly will be aware and good and glad to know that these guys are all getting there, getting in place, and when that fire's knocked down, they can go in right away.
That's right. That's the first goal right now, though, they said, is they need to make it safe for these people to get in there. So they're putting out the fire, and I don't know if you can see at the roof on top of the ladder there, Don, or you'll be able to show them that on the left side there. There is still firefighters on the roof, still battling the smoke and flames, and every now and then you do see flames, and so there are still firefighters on the roof battling this fire oh so many hours later, and they are getting these search and rescue teams ready to get inside there. But there you see the firefighting efforts here at the Pentagon still going on so many hours later, and they have all the teams getting in place. They came in on ride-on buses from Montgomery County, the Montgomery County Urban Search and Rescue Team, and some of the helicopters we've seen coming and going has been bringing in other police personnel from Fairfax County and surrounding areas. But you can see there, I don't know if you're showing the wide shot there of the devastation, but my goodness, that plane went in there and it did an awful lot of damage. It no doubt claimed a number of lives, and they're going in to try to get the if there's anyone still alive perhaps in there, and then of course the other victims, and they're getting ready to do that, as you saw with the teams that are getting in place now.
Unbelievable devastation there. Bob, thank you very much for that report.
And law enforcement now confirming that that was American Airlines Flight 77 with 58 passengers, 4 flight attendants, and 2 pilots that went down. It departed from Washington Dulles Airport this morning, headed to Los Angeles, and among those on board was Republican activist Barbara Olson.
One point that we should make to this, and that is that they were talking about how hard it is to put the fire out. If that plane just took off for Dulles, it was completely fueled to go all the way to Los Angeles. So that fuel went through the entire building as it tore through the side of the Pentagon, and certainly it fueled all of those fires that, as we see, they're still trying to get put out.
That's why it's probably taken all these hours to try to knock that down. Let's go back to Fox 5's Paul Wagner live at downtown D.C.
Tracy, for the viewers who didn't see it a few minutes ago, there were approximately a dozen or so National Guard, D.C. National Guard Humvees that came down K Street with a police escort. On the side of those Humvees, it said military police, heading towards the Washington Circle area, perhaps heading to the Special Operations Division of the D.C. Police to get their orders on where Chief Ramsey and the mayor would like them to go. Let me stress from the beginning that there have been no explosions here in D.C., although D.C. Police, ATF, Secret Service, FBI have been responding to numerous calls. Sirens have been wailing up and down the streets here for hours and hours and hours, although for the last hour or so, last 2 hours, it's been fairly calm down here. Let me show you a couple of things. Up the street here, up 17th Street, you can see that is blocked off. There is yellow police tape across there and vehicles not allowing anybody to go up near the executive office buildings or the White House. You can see the horse-mounted police officers now coming down the street. One of these horse-mounted officers is a D.C. police officer who's in the middle of the street directing traffic at this point. Many of the businesses, if not all of them here in the downtown area, have closed down. A lot of them have put signs up saying due to the terrorist attack they have closed and will remain closed through the night and into tomorrow. Also, some of the hotels that we've been to, the Mayflower up here and the Capitol Hilton down here, they're not letting anybody into those hotels unless you have some identification and can get in. This area down here, it's like a maze trying to get through the area. Many of the streets down around the FBI Washington Field Office, the Capitol, D.C. Police Headquarters, the White House, all closed off. You cannot get down through those areas. But we have seen an ease of traffic. K Street seeming to be the best place to get through the city at this point, at least where we are. Connecticut Avenue behind me here, very much open. You can go up towards DuPont Circle without any problem. So it's pretty much cleared out down here. But not hearing D.C. Police and the ATF and others responding to that many scares anymore. There had been a number of reports of suspicious packages, suspicious trucks, and whatnot. I can also tell you that D.C. Police are working on a heightened state of alert under a state of emergency. All D.C. police officers have been called into work and are on standby. As Chief Ramsey said, they are working 12-hour shifts at this time, but are on standby, ready to go to work if they're needed. And we do have a little bit of sound from Chief Ramsey. We talked to him a couple of hours ago in his cruiser outside D.C. Police Headquarters. the city?
We asked that the mayor activate the Guard. They have taken over traffic control at various locations throughout the city. We've not asked for any resources from outside the city. Right now, we seem to have everything pretty much under control, and unless something actually happens inside the district.
The chief is telling us that he just wants people to remain calm, not to panic, and to stay in touch with the media, listen to the radio, watch television, and stay up on exactly what's happening. But again, I can tell you there have been no attacks here in Washington, no bombs have gone off, and at this point, police are still remaining very, very vigilant, responding to all sorts of suspicious packages, trucks, and whatnot. Mike and Tracy.
Thank you very much, Paul. We're talking to Jonathan Strum now from Georgetown University. He is an expert on terrorism. And Jonathan, you're on the phone, I understand, with us now. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Let me ask you a quick question here. You heard, you probably have heard just recently the report that we had from Pat McGrath, where the Senate Intelligence Committee members were furious over what had taken place here, feeling like there had been, and the term that was used by one senator was a catastrophic lapse in security, that we weren't prepared for this. How could that take place?
I'm not really certain how it could take place, except that this kind of operation, it is surprising that there is no information. But, you know, we have to remember that these guys plan things all over the world. The training for this probably took place, if it is Osama bin Laden, in Afghanistan, possibly Pakistan, maybe Iran. And it's very, very difficult for us, for the United States or for any Western intelligence agency, to infiltrate those these organizations. It clearly is a failing. I'm not certain that any intelligence service would have had that. If the Israelis had gotten a wind of it, they would have told us.
It is amazing that something of this scope that took place today. I mean, this was with, for lack of a better term, this was performed with military precision, it would seem.
Well, that's part of what makes it very scary, because obviously they had to have, not only did they have to have planning, not only did they have to get the pilots trained to fly these planes, because we have to assume that a U.S. pilot would not have flown into the World Trade Center, but would have rather ditched into the Hudson. Right. So that they not only did they do that, but they also had to be able to get people on board, either with weapons in some fashion to get on, which means that they had to evade U.S. security at least a couple of airports. Mm-hmm. So this thing had to have been planned for a long time. It had to have it took money and it took planning. And, it hit us where we are most vulnerable.
Well, here we are in this open society. We pride ourselves on the fact that we can take care of ourselves, that we can withstand anything. The fact is we probably will withstand this. The question will be, how will we prevent it in the future? Do you see this as being an opportunity for us to strengthen our ability to get our intelligence more accurate, or is this something that's actually set us back?
Well, I think that you'll probably see increases in human intelligence budgets for our various intelligence agencies. But I think that what we have to go is just to be back on track, to remain vigilant without losing our civil liberties, because if we go too much in the direction of withdrawal of civil liberties, then the terrorists win. I think we also have to be very careful about how we respond. We must respond. We must respond with tremendous force, but we also shouldn't respond unilaterally, and we certainly shouldn't have a knee-jerk response and that be the end of it. This was an incredibly serious event. This will require incredibly serious planning for reprisal.
Well, you said respond with force, and that's a good point. I mean, we're almost blindfolded. Certainly our intelligence community was blindfolded to this, blindsided certainly, as to what was going to happen. Who do we fight? Who do we take this action against?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think the suspicion that everybody obviously has, and that everybody's been talking about, is Osama bin Laden,
who we haven't been able to catch for 7 years.
That's right, and part of it is because some governments with which we have relations and some governments with which we don't, for example, or good relations like the Taliban in Afghanistan, mm-hmm. have kind of been playing both sides of the fence. Well, he's not here. He doesn't really do it. We know him. We know he couldn't do it. That's what the Taliban said today.
That's right.
Well, America's going to have to stand up and say, okay, this is it. You're either with us or you're against us. Either you give us 100% cooperation and you turn him over, or we're going to take action against whatever terrorist training centers are on your soil.
I don't want to belabor this point, but certainly you got to wonder. I mean, look at what we tried to do after the Gulf War. We thought we'll put some sanctions in here and we'll get these people turned around, and what it's turned around is kind of blown up in our faces. It hasn't helped us at all.
Well, the Gulf War is a little different, and quite frankly, we didn't do what we should have done in the Gulf War. I mean, for example, some of the anger that some of the Arab world has against the United States because of the problems that sanctions have created for Iraqi children and all of that.
Right.
Had we gone in and taken out Saddam in the first place, you wouldn't have had that problem because you'd have had a change of regime. Mm-hmm. And at least you had a chance for something. So, I mean, it's important that we respond, but it's also important that we don't do, I mean, sending a couple of cruise missiles into the training base will do nothing.
It won't accomplish a thing.
And we need to get the international community behind us. This was not simply an attack on the United States. This was an attack on, in essence, the free world and the democratic world.
Jonathan, before we let you go, and I hate to interrupt you here, but just let me ask you this one question. Have we solidified? Do we have the world behind us on this thing, or do you think there are those who are rooting for the other side?
I think that with the exception of perhaps Iran, Afghanistan, Syria, I think we will have the support of the entire world.
Jonathan, thank you very much. Jonathan Strum, Georgetown University, a terrorism expert there. Let's talk to John Henrahan very quickly. John has been at the hospital over in Arlington where they have brought the majority of the folks who have been hurt in the incident at the Pentagon. And what's the very latest over there now, John?
Mike, the survivor count that have been brought to the hospital, Virginia Hospital Center, Arlington, is now at 36. A steady stream of ambulances, we have some video here, has been coming in all day. It has slowed down to a trickle, but about an hour and a quarter ago we got some more patients. They were people who had initially been transported to an urgent care center, kind of a walk-in clinic not too far from the Pentagon, but their injuries were sufficiently bad that eventually it was decided that they should be transported here to the hospital. Of the 36 patients here, 8 of them are in intensive care, 4 on ventilators. The chief of emergency here says that he considers all 8 of those ICU patients in critical condition with possible life-threatening injuries. 6 patients have been discharged. Some of them were frankly suffering from shell shock. Most of them could barely talk on the way out, and most of them, almost all of them, declined interviews. The injuries that physicians are seeing here at Virginia Hospital Center, Arlington, are those that are normally associated with a blast or explosion. Trauma, broken arms and legs, burns, and the doctor said among the most sick people are those who are suffering from severe smoke inhalation. So the numbers are 36 patients have been transported here, 8 in intensive care. 4 of those 8 are breathing with the help of ventilators. That's the latest from the hospital in Arlington.
John, thanks very much. That smoke inhalation, of course, if you've ever been out at an airport and you have those jets blowing by you there starting up, that is so acrid. There's no question about that. And to have it burning inside a building, that is the worst thing. Most people don't realize that fire deaths are generally not from actually being touched by flame. They are from breathing the smoke from that fire.
Destroys the respiratory system.
Certainly does. Very quickly.
Very, very quickly. It's a horrible, horrible way to die. And there's so much death. And I know the count is going to be coming in this evening and will be revised several times as the evening goes on, as they continue to search the area for any possible survivors and bodies. Let's go to Fox 5's Will Thomas, live in downtown D.C. Will. Will, can you hear me?
Yes, I am here, Tracy. I'm sorry. Let me first tell you what we are seeing is an outpouring of people trying to do something positive at the I Street Red Cross Blood Donation Center. Just moments ago when we were there, the mayor of the mayor of Los Angeles was there. That's James Hahn, just elected in June. Let's go to the videotape. I understand we do have that. He was there actually giving blood. This is his first trip since being elected in June. He was here in Washington at the old executive office building having a meeting when he said a staff member ran in and said, "My God, they've hit the Pentagon." He said he was shocked. As we know now, 2 planes were headed for Los Angeles. So as you can imagine, this obviously hits very close to home for the mayor. Take a look.
really does. We know there are many families in Los Angeles who were going to meet loved ones at the airport that they'll never see. You know, a lot of people who have relatives in New York who are still worried about what the outcome is going to be there. So I think the whole country is affected by this. But
there is some discussion now that the mayor may be flown back to Los Angeles by military plane. As we know now, all air traffic has been halted. About 100 people are lined up right now at the I Street Red Cross Blood Donation Center. They're processing people as quickly as possible, but you're being asked to wait a day or two, even a week or more. Red Cross suggests going online to redcross.org to find out about whether or not you qualify to give blood. You're asked not to call the blood centers. There is also a blood center in Fairfax and Rockville. We talked about air travel. Rod is here. And basically stranded in Washington. You wanted to head back to Texas this morning.
Yes, I was supposed to fly back this morning at about 11:30, and as soon as we got to the airport, they started shutting the airport down.
Which airport, Rod?
Out of Dulles.
So what will you do now?
Wait and watch. I got some friends that